Welcome again to Idiot Wind, our bluster through the never-ending tour of Bob Dylan albums. And it must be great to see us again. It's great for us to see each other. Sid's in his volcano base somewhere off the coast of Tyneside. And nothing so glamorous for me. I'm trapped in an ecopod 12 miles beneath the permafrost of Antarctica. We are making splendid progress with this series. The artwork, Dylan Vinyl, the definitive collection. We are now in episode 3, and it's heartening to find we have battled our way all the way through to Bob Dylan's debut album. It feels great. I feel a real sense of achievement, don't you, Sid? We've actually got to this first album now after 3 weeks. But anyway,
I feel like we've been wading through the space-time continuum, kind of arriving in the future, but then which is our past, but Bob's future, and then we're working our way back through to ground zero.
Ground zero, very, very well put. Shut up. And well, basically, the reason for this is the creators, or as I call them, the puppet masters of Dylan Vinyl, the definitive collection, have completely mangled the laws of space and time. Yeah. So week 1, it was album number 3. Last edition, it was album number 2. And now we're on album number 1. And next issue, it's album number 4. Now, this is Bob Dylan's first album. I called the Freewheeling Bob Dylan his make or break album. And it was a make or break album because this sold hardly any copies. It's a very important album in popular music history. It's Bob Dylan's first album. But some people, the magazine said it only sold 5,000 copies. I read a book this morning that said it only sold 2,500 copies. And so there were urgent talks at Columbia Records. Shall we keep this funny voiced little fucker on? And John Hammond said yes. But the reason this album is so interesting to me is it's an album I've played for years. It's the first album of one of the most important songwriters and definitely the most important lyricist in rock history. It has 13 tracks and only 2 of them are written by him. So that's quite unusual for someone who goes on to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. We've only got 2 examples of his writing on this record. And so many people seem to write this off as a kind of trivial record. But I think maybe because my expectations were so low, I find this record really interesting. I find all the weight of the analysis. What's Bob talking about? What are the lyrics about? Where are we in his artistic development? They don't count here. He's just starting out. He's not even sure if he's going to be a interesting enough writer to make a living as a songwriter at this point. He's just doing a folk act on a record, and it's tremendously fun. I found it full of humor, full of portents of doom, and I thought the joy of listening to it just as a musical record with no great need for analysis or footnotes actually made this quite an unusual experience. What do you think, Sid?
Well, I like on the previous occasions when we've talked about these releases, I'd never heard this album before. I'm familiar with some of the material, obviously.
Yeah.
But the 2 Dylan penned tracks that you mentioned that were on the album, I'd not heard them before. Overall, I thought it's customary, perhaps, on these things to say the copy, the album that I got from the newsagents when I went for me pint of milk, sounds great. Now, I don't know if it sounds great compared to, because I've got nothing to compare it to, but it does sound good. And you know what? I really enjoyed it. I actually really enjoyed it. I thought, for me, as somebody who's not that kind of mad keen about Dylan, and in some cases a bit skeptical about Dylan, it was a great listen. And I think primarily it was a great listen for a few reasons. one for me was the choice of material. There was some interesting material on it, but first and foremost, it's short. It's over quite quickly, and for me, that's a bonus when I listen to Bob Dylan. If it's over quickly, then I'm a happy camper. I can't wait to get to Nashville Skyline, which because this album's 37 minutes long, and Nashville Skyline is 27 minutes long. So I don't know when this series eventually arrives at Nashville Skyline, but I can't wait to get there. So yeah, it's good.
Well, I'm really glad to see some of your criteria for judging these albums being foregrounded by your comments there. Thank you, Sid. Also, as well as being a short album, this consists of mainly quite short tracks.
Yeah.
There's no, the things you dread, the epics, are absent completely here, because most of these songs aren't written by Bob Dylan. So
there's one track.
I think you're a happy camper, aren't you?
There's one track on here. I forget which one now. I can't. Unfortunately, there it is. Baby, let me follow you. Sorry, no. House of the Rising Sun. That clocks in at 5 minutes. And to be fair to Bob Dylan, that song always, whoever covers it, it always goes on too long. It's always like about 3 minutes too long, longer than it needs to be. But the other thing that I loved about this album, what you were saying about, there's no weight of expectation with this album. I think Bob Dylan on it sounds remarkably free and vibrant. I also think I really enjoy. I've said this about one of the other albums we listened to. He's got some great comedy voices, and some of his vocals on this album are on the first one, the very first track. Is it called "You're No Good"? Yeah, "You're No Good."
Yes.
He goes full on Lonnie Donegan. It sounds like he does. It sounds like a Lonnie Donegan tribute act, which I mean, it probably isn't, but and on some of the other tracks, when he sort of winds up like that, it's an extraordinary sound.
I love it when you do his voice. Well, basically, this album is 59 years old, and
nearly as old as you.
No, it's actually older than me. It's not as old as you. But I, being born in 1995, I'm considerably younger than this record. This record was recorded in November 1961 and released in March 1962. So that's a long time ago, isn't it? And as you said, it's strangely liberating, not only to have this weight of expectation and analysis taken off your shoulders, but it sounds like it's off his shoulders as well.
Yeah.
He sounds like he's just having a good time. And so the two tracks he has written, I'll just go into them quite briefly. Talking New York, the first one. I often get a bit, he's doing another one of those talking songs, I thought this one was pretty funny, actually. I thought this was pretty refreshingly light-hearted. I thought, he's coming for the first time to Greenwich Village. He's paying his union dues. He's got no food on the table, and I don't know. There's quite a few comic asides in that. The other song, the other end of the album, is "Song for Woody," which there's a fantastic bit of purple prose on here. It says in the notes by Stacey Williams on the back of the record, it says. Dedicated to one of his greatest inspirations and written in the musical language of his idol. And that's true. It seems to imply he's got a great friendship with Woody Guthrie, which is open to debate. He did visit Woody Guthrie when he was dying of Huntington's career at the time in the outskirts of New York, and he did visit him several times. But I don't know how communicative Woody Guthrie really was at that stage of his deterioration. I think he liked Bob Dylan singing his own songs to him, Woody Guthrie's own songs. So that's what Bob did. And he was a real fan of Woody Guthrie. He took a lot of Woody Guthrie's style. But the main thing to realise here is he's stolen the tune of Song to Woody from a tune of one of Woody's songs that Woody himself actually stole. So it's not one of Woody's original melodies, because Woody Guthrie often, like in the folk tradition, took other melodies and wrote his own words, and that's what he's doing. And I think for the only time on this record, you get a hint of what's coming with the words of that, because not only is it a beautiful tribute, the words are beautiful about Woody Guthrie, and it's a real tribute to him. It's very much Dylan implying, and now I'm taking over.
Right.
Which is what he's doing.
Right.
But as for the other songs on the record, I think this is a record that proves that at this stage of his career, Bob Dylan doesn't have to write the songs to influence a lot of people. So when you get to track 3, In My Time of Dying, I remember in my teenage years, in 1975, when even though I was born in 1995, it's a bit difficult to comprehend, I know, but the Puppet Masters have mangled the laws of space and time, so I can do that too. And on the Led Zeppelin album Physical Graffiti that came out in 1975, there's an immensely epic, about 12-minute version of a song called, In My Time of Dying. And the composer credits on that say Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones, and John Bonham. And I was pretty impressed how Bob managed to cover that song on this album recorded in 1961, which is, of course, 14 years before they wrote it. So that's pretty impressive. I don't know which way the influence is flowing there, but I think I've got a pretty good idea. And the other song, of course, is House of the Rising Sun, which you've already mentioned. And I can never forget the sight of Eric Burdon backstage in Newcastle in the film Don't Look Back, with his fellow animals opening bottles of Nuki Brown on the piano, and saying to Bob, with all seriousness, "It's great to meet you, Bob. We're real idols of yours," which, of course, is not what he meant to say. But I should think one of the reasons they're real idols of Bob's is because they probably heard this song on his record. And that's been quite successful for them in future years.
Well, not just that one. The other song that the Animals covered was "Baby Let Me Follow You Down," which I think.
Oh, really? I don't know much about the Animals. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of repurposed as "Baby Let Me Take You Home," which the Animals had a bit of a hit single with. And actually, I've got to say, both their version of Rising Sun and "Baby Let Me Take You Home" or "Baby Let Me Follow You Down," the Animals versions are really good. I mean, the
Animals are a really good band from what I know about them.
A really, really good band. But I was chiming in with what you were saying earlier on. It's Bob Dylan before he's Bob Dylan, and so he doesn't have. He's in a way he's unencumbered by all of the stuff that would later follow him around. And I love the just the kind of the way he throws himself into each performance. I read somewhere, or maybe you told me, that it was apparently quite hard to record him. Because he would be moving on the microphone would be there, and he'd be around.
Later on, particularly, there's a recurring problem with his jacket hitting the strings of the guitar continually. That is actually heard on a couple of records.
And you can hear, you can just hear that sort of mobility happening in front of the microphone. So all sorts of reasons that all. As you listen to the album in sequence, which, as I said, first time I've heard it, I found it pretty compelling. It was. I felt like I was on a bit of a sleigh run, kind of moving around the twists and turns of the material.
One of the things I have to say is, listening to it, knowing I want to talk about it, I was very impressed with it, and I got the sense this is what he must have been like in those little folk clubs.
Maybe
he's doing a selection of songs. We mentioned how much he's enjoying himself and how carefree he is, and on Talking New York and other songs, he's doing his weird voices and telling jokes, basically. And yet, the range of it, there's at least 3 songs about dying on this record.
Yeah,
This is about a 20-year-old. In My Time of Dying, we've already mentioned, which I think is a very convincing version of that. Fixing to Die, and the album ends with See That My Grave Is Kept Clean. So to have such a wide range of moods, from Talking New York when he's going to Greenwich Village and, you know, talking about getting ripped off for the first time this early in his career, and then, you know, singing about his dying day, and singing with great authority and conviction for a man basically so young. I mean, this is a 20-year-old when the album comes out. I mean,
but I think most folk singers were at the time when Dylan would have been recording this. I mean, songs about death were pretty much in the repertoire.
Yes.
I don't think that's something unique to Bob Dylan. I think all of them were doing it, obviously from a blues tradition, which is where In My Time of Dying, I think, comes from, doesn't it? But
so it's an old blues song, like most of the major Led Zeppelin hits. It is, in fact, written in the 1920s or somewhere, by some bloke who was too poor to sue them when they released their version. As Homer Simpson said, one of the members of the band, Mr. Page, is one of the greatest thieves of American music in history. That's what Homer Simpson says on the London Eye. Oh, look, you can see Jimmy Page's house from here, he says. And Lisa says, "Who's that, Dad?" And he says, "He's just one of the greatest thieves of American music in history, Lisa."
I like the track you mentioned earlier on. I thought, again, I really enjoyed. I mean, I'm a bit skeptical about, you know, everybody, including you, sort of says he's one of the greatest lyricists of the 20th century, etc., etc.
You're skeptical of that, are you?
I mean, for me, I can take or leave any of that stuff.
But that's true of you and lyrics generally, isn't it?
Not exclusively, but I'm kind of I prefer me music instrumental mostly, with one or two notable
exceptions.
As
I say, that's you and lyrics generally.
But I did like when you were when he was doing Talking New York Blues or whatever. No, what's it called?
Talking New York.
That was great because you, like you said earlier, you know, he's sort of, on the one hand, I mean, I take it with a complete pinch of salt, but
please take everything with a pinch of salt. Everything.
He's writing the biopic even then, you know.
Yes.
It's scenes from, you know, scenes from his life, but it's very entertaining. That's the thing. I think the one thing I would say about this album is it entertained me far more than I was expecting. I was expecting it because of the nature of it. You know, kind of the first time, I thought it might be a bit hesitant, a bit sort of restrained in places, not fully developed or anything. And it may well be all of those things, but it doesn't come across like that. It comes across as a kind of, right, let me at it. It's almost like one of those rodeo things, you know, in the studio in Columbia. They open the gate and out rushes Bob Dylan with his guitar and his harmonica. He just
here I am
to the microphone and blam, you know. And I really like that quality. I might not be so enthusiastic about some of the material, but I love the quality of the performance and where it goes. Very entertaining.
It is a performance album. It is, as I say, it was recorded in 2 3-hour sessions.
Right.
And there's loads of other tracks recorded as well in those sessions, but these are the ones they chose. And again, it is an album where you get some sense of what a consummate performer he must have been to make the name he'd made. The back of the album's also got a review from the year before that this was released, from the New York Times, by Robert Shelton, one of the first people to write a book about Bob Dylan, No Direction Home. He was a very early champion of Bob Dylan, and he was obviously causing a stir in the clubs. And John Hammond, I think.
But I think it's worth I mean, I'm not absolutely. I fully admit that what I know about Bob Dylan, you can get on the back of a small postage stamp or a small harmonica, maybe. But I do remember. I can't remember. One year I was in America and we were in Woodstock, and we visited a place. We were staying at a place where there was Albert Grossman, Dylan's manager.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
both used to live there, yeah.
So Albert Grossman's grave was in the grounds of this place where we were. And so, you know, Julie had a look at it. I obviously knew the name and knew the connection. But I somewhere along the line, again, it's probably you've probably told me this, that one of the clever things that Dylan had going for him, it wasn't just that he was a bit of a natural performer and could generate a bit of he actually had good management, in inverted commas, who knew which buttons to press. So getting Robert Shelton in comes from somewhere, you know. Now,
although I must say, at that stage, Robert Shelton begins writing about him. I don't think Grossman was the manager.
Okay.
I think that's pre Grossman.
Right.
When he had very well-meaning but inappropriate, more hucksterish Broadway style management before Grossman. Well, Grossman was a very cunning manager, you know.
He mentions that. He mentions that, doesn't he, in one of the songs about being robbed by a fountain pen or something.
Yeah.
That's in Talking
New York, isn't it? Yeah. He makes a joke about people ripping him off. Which is the first. And the irony is, of course, he doesn't realise how much he's going to be ripped off, and he doesn't even realise till some time after it's happened.
So, where, what's the track that you would pick from this album?
I enjoy the entire album as a performance, but my favourite track, because of what it portends, is "Song for Woody."
Okay.
I think that's an opening into the next stage of Bob Dylan. This is an album of 13 tracks, 2 tracks written by him. I think his next album is also 13 tracks, but only 2 of the tracks aren't written by him. It's the mirror image of this album. And the big change before the next record, the freewheeling Bob Dylan, is the writing explodes. He begins writing day and night. And because of that, and because, as I said, I do find it quite a beautiful song, and also a kind of baton passing song, even though it's written by the bloke who the baton is being passed to. I think "Song for Woody" is the most significant and enjoyable song on this record. What do you think?
I liked so much of it, I have to say. I was surprised by how much I liked of it. There's one track that I nearly went for, but just because I thought the performance was so cute and lovely. And that was Freight Train Blues. I thought was wonderful.
It's good, isn't it?
He holds a note. He goes, "Ooh."
It's like a train whistle, isn't it? It's like the whistle of the train. And Sid, you've frozen up.
No, I haven't. I was just singing a long note.
Oh, were you? Oh,
yeah. He holds that note for 14 seconds. I actually counted it.
You timed it.
I did.
Yeah.
The track I'm going to pick, though, I did think about one of the original tracks for obvious reasons, but the track I liked the most was "In My Time of Dying." I thought, and so that's the track I'd pick off this one. Not one of his, as we've already said. It's a Led Zeppelin cover, but he had the foresight to start covering Led Zeppelin several years before they were even formed.
I know,
but actually, it just I just thought it was a really good, lean, economic performance, which kind of went through the various tropes that blues songs go through, but he did it really well, and it was sharp, and so I liked it for that. So there we are. That was
it is a really atmospheric and committed performance, isn't it?
It is. So overall, I was out of all of the ones we've done so far, I think this is the one I've enjoyed the most.
Really?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
well, you see, I'm not surprised because I was kind of taken aback by how much I enjoyed playing this record.
Yeah.
You know, giving it. I've not played it for a long time before we did this for this,
Yeah.
and it's not one I go to very often because you just think in the back of your mind, well, he didn't write well. But when you actually listen to the record, it's an enormous amount of fun. It's one of the most fun Bob Dylan records, I think. You know, so
I would definitely recommend it to our listener out there. So the next album I gather from the blurb in the magazine, and we haven't mentioned the magazine, but very briefly, the magazine is just as crap as it usually is.
it certainly is.
The next one is coming up in issue 4 of Dylan Vinyl, the Definitive Collection. I don't know if you can see it, is another side of Bob Dylan. So
yeah, I've already got that because I've already got that copy of that album, although it's not in the shops, because I have subscribed to the Definitive Collection, and as part of my subscription, I've received an incredible free gift, which is this rather spectacular. I'm trying to open it now. It's quite complicated. Unless you've got a degree in mechanical engineering, as I haven't, it's a record cleaning kit of rather spectacular. Now I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, but Sean, what's the point of you having that when you haven't got a turntable? Well, I've got a shock announcement here. This isn't going to be an unboxing, so don't fret. But I've got a turntable. I've bought myself a turntable.
Blimey.
With a bit of back pay I received.
Wow.
And I've set it up. So from now on, I'll be giving you my views in future editions on the quality of the pressings of these records.
Well, on that amazing reveal,